In detail as the billionaire political activist George Soros, who has kicked up a storm with his comments aimed at targeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the country. India, now that the Congress links with the controversial businessman have emerged, have now put the party in the dock. But the BJP said that Soros wanted to overthrow the Indian government and prop up a more pliant government instead. Let's get you the interesting web of vested interests which leads to the doorstep of the Congress party. As the Sarkar counters the enemy of India, this is not just it, but let's tell you, Soros has also a close link to the Gandhi-Nehru Parivar. In the details that are coming in as far as in the Bharat Jodo Yatra is concerned, Salil Shetty, who was seen marching along with Rahul Gandhi in the Yatra, even the daughter of the former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh is the director at the OSF in New York. Even when it comes to Soros's friends, Fori Nehru, who was married to V.K. Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru's cousin, and he came to a private jet to wish her on her 100th birthday as well. But it's the first family that is now being linked to the India baiter George Soros, where the Congress party has now gone on the offensive. First denying the picture with Rahul Gandhi, saying it does not substantiate anything, and then raking up pictures of the Prime Minister with some economic offenders now also sitting in foreign lands. Here are the comparisons now being drawn.
अगर राहुल गांधी के एक फोटोग्राफ इस बात का सबूत है कि जॉर्ज ने जो बयान दिया है वो राहुल गांधी ने दिलवाया है, तो मैं प्रधानमंत्री से बहुत अदब से कहूंगा, आपका फोटोग्राफ मेरे पास नीरव मोदी के साथ है, तो क्या वो जो रुपए लेके भागा वो आपने भगवाया है? आपने एक मीटिंग में चौकसी का नाम लिया था कि चौकसी मेरे सामने बैठे हुए हैं, तो चौकसी ने जो गड़बड़ की 10,000 करोड़ की, क्या वो मोदी साहब ने कराई थी? अगर सिर्फ एक फोटोग्राफ इस बात का सबूत बन जाता है कि राहुल गांधी ने जॉर्ज से बयान दिलवाया है, तब तो ये इतने सारे सबूत हैं, तो क्या मोदी साहब को जिम्मेदार ठहराया जाएगा?
Well, the questions arises, is there a sinister geopolitical plot against India? Break India forces being actively funded by foreign players, and are international players trying to prop up a more pliant government in India, where a billionaire Hungarian American who positions himself as a political activist has targeted India and the Prime Minister. He rakes up the Hindenburg report on Adani and hopes that it will weaken the Prime Minister. The unsolicited call for a regime change of a democratically elected government from a non-state player betrays a larger conspiracy. Whether Soros strike on India has a sinister antecedents and snares our nations its web of vested interests, where the billionaire financier has been now labelled as the funder-in-chief of the ecosystem which is working to overthrow the democratically elected government in India. Times Now will now do a deep dive and show you how psyops and Soros in India is nothing not new. But even when it comes to what he has to say against India, let's first listen in to those charges that he leveled.
It's a democracy, but its leader, Narendra Modi, is no Democrat. Inciting violence against Muslims was an important factor in his meteoric rise. India is a member of the Quad, which also includes Australia, the US, and Japan. But it buys a lot of Russian oil at a steep discount. Modi and business tycoon Adani are close allies. Modi is silent on the subject, but he will have to answer questions from foreign investors and in Parliament. This will significantly weaken Modi's stranglehold on India's federal government and open the door to push for much-needed institutional reforms.
And the Congress party and its flip-flop seems to be obvious as far as what has now been coming across as fresh statements from the former Union Minister P. Chidambaram, where he goes on to say, and I quote, that I do not agree with most of what George Soros had said in the past, and I do not agree with most of what he says now. But due to label his mark as an attempt to topple a democratically elected government in India as a plural statement, the people of India will determine who will be in, who will be out of the government. I did not know that the Modi government was so feeble that it can be toppled by a stray statement by the 92-year-old rich foreign national. Nyamika, good morning. How do we understand Congress party and its defensive nature as far as first the reaction that came in from Jairam Ramesh and now P. Chidambaram?
Well, absolutely. As yesterday also we have seen that the Congress General Secretary Jairam Ramesh has hit out at the billionaire investor George Soros, in which he has mentioned to bring regarding the turmoil in Gautam Adani's business empire by saying that it may bring about a democratic revival in India. And for that matter, yesterday we have seen that Jairam Ramesh has said that the parties, he had invoked the party's Nehruvian legacy to the state that the people like him cannot determine our electoral outcomes. And now the former Union Minister P. Chidambaram has also asserted over the fact, as he has also mentioned that in his tweet, that he did not agree with the most of what George Soros has said in the past, and he do not agree with what he had said now, because he had mentioned that to the label to his remarks as an attempt to topple the democratically elected government in India is a plural statement, as he has also mentioned that the people of India will determine who will be in and who will be out of the government of India. So for that matter, now the Congress party seems like it has also hit out at the billionaire investor George Soros, as the BJP has also targeted Soros for all the statements which he had given yesterday.
All right, Nyamika, thanks very much for the update. So the Congress party, now fresh reaction coming in. They are saying that whether the Adani issue sparks a democratic revival in the country depends entirely on the grand old party and the other opposition parties, and it has nothing got to do with the billionaire investor George Soros. So Congress party here maintaining distance. The Sarkar, of course, has now called out the concerted effort in the interference to India's democracy by a known Modi beta. They say the Mazboot India scares the ecosystem which is trying to prop up a more pliable government. Here, listen into the response coming in from the government side.
जॉर्ज सोरोस का जो ऐलान हुआ है, वो ऐलान आप निश्चित रूप से बारीकी से समझें। वो हमारी डेमोक्रेसी को ध्वस्त करने का ऐलान मात्र इसलिए करते हैं ताकि उनके हैंड पिक्ड लोग सरकार चलाएं। उन्होंने एक फंड का ऐलान किया, $1 बिलियन का, जो वो हिंदुस्तान में और जहां जहां हिंदुस्तान के इंटरेस्ट है वहां पर संचारित करेंगे ताकि हिंदुस्तान को ठेस पहुंचे। मोदी की इमेज पर वार पहली बार नहीं हुआ है। हिंदुस्तान के लोकतांत्रिक ढांचे पर वार का ऐलान उन्होंने पहली बार किया है जॉर्ज सोरोस ने। दिस वॉर इज ट्राइंग टू बी माउंटेड अगेंस्ट इंडिया, एंड व्हाट स्टैंड्स बिटवीन दैट वॉर एंड आवर कंट्रीज इंटरेस्ट्स इज प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी।
Well, Group Editor Navika Kumar also had a word with the Indian economist K.V. Subramanian on the ongoing controversy. Listen in.
Joining me tonight on the News Hour is Mr. K.V. Subramanian, Executive Director at the IMF and also former Chief Economic Advisor to the Finance Minister. Mr. K.V. Subramanian, let me get straight to the point. How do you react to George Soros's comment that the Adani turmoil may weaken the Modi government and spark a democratic revival in India? Now, is this just an observation made by a private individual who's a businessman, lends money, does funding? Or do you see this in connection with the foreign conspiracy against India and the bright spark that India has become?
Navika, thanks a lot for inviting me. I wouldn't call it a conspiracy because, conspiracies typically will have much bigger effect than, statements like these will have. I can vouch for the fact that, on two things. One, the claim made by the Hindenburg report that Adani is the biggest con in history. I wrote a piece yesterday in the Times of India showing that, you need a smoking gun to make a claim like that. And if there is a plausible explanation, I'm not saying the plausible explanation, but if there is a plausible explanation that does not go through stock manipulation, then I think the smoking gun, becomes even less credible in the absence of it. So these are claims that are being made. There's a lot that's been written on, whether or not some of these democracy indices that these folks talk about, do they capture, the extent of democracy? I'll give you one simple fact, I think, which a lot of our viewers should know. The recent elections that happened for states, in one state, Himachal Pradesh, the incumbent government did not come back to power. But the crucial fact was, not a single booth was there repolling required. I think, that is testimony to democracy if anything is required. So these are a lot of, claims that are being made not backed with evidence.
But then do you think the government is overreacting when it says that there is an anti-India, anti-Modi, force, which sometimes, joins hands with Indian critics of the Modi government? And this is a targeting of the Modi Sarkar, which has some roots in these kind of institutions abroad.
So, Navika, let me remind viewers of the following instances. When I had assumed my role as the chief economic advisor, there was this claim that was being made that the Indian economy is facing some structural problems and that only 4 to 4.5% growth will be here to stay. We are going to be basically stuck in the middle income trap. That did not happen. And then when COVID hit, there were people who were saying that there's doomsday for the Indian economy. When I spoke about the V-shaped recovery, people did not believe it. Saying there's going to be basically people dying on the streets and this and that. That did not happen either. Now, that is entertained, the Adani episode will actually have an economic impact on India. I have absolutely, no doubt that I think that's an overstretch. So you can see from previous instances, there's a lot of hope that is possibly, filling in for the frustration that has come in.
So what's the motivation for George Soros to make a statement like this?
That I know. All I can say is that these kind of statements are not backed with good evidence.
Do you think it's a pattern?
Well, if you look at there is a certain section of the the Indian elite as well, which has been disenfranchised, and that elite tends to work with other elements who may have possible interest in putting out statements like these. That's the only motivation that I can see.
But do you think the questions raised by Hindenburg, the point that Mr. George Soros also raises questions on Adani, require a detailed and a more comprehensive response study / investigation?
See, there are 2 or 3 points here. First, as I tweeted earlier as well, Adani being a private firm should respond purely on the basis of its financials. The piece that I wrote yesterday was, just looking at the financials, showing that the stock price appreciation has happened only since March 2021, and that too because of the revenue growth. Where is that revenue growth coming from? Part of it is, of course, from the focus on infrastructure that you would recall started with the 1st February 2021 budget. That is the way I would actually recommend for a private company to respond, point number 1. The second point is in terms of, aspects relating to nationalism, etc. I would actually encourage, a private firm to always stay away from it, because, by doing that, you're walking into the trap that is being laid. A private firm should be responding just based on the business fundamentals. Now, when it comes to the impact possibly on the economy, as I have mentioned, it's unlikely there's going to be a large impact. If you look at someone as independent as Ashwath Damodaran, and who should know his valuation, there's a very nice blog article that he wrote. In fact, my piece actually built on the analysis that he had done, and he